Daniel stood in his luxurious apartment, holding the elegant invitation to his ex-girlfriend Claire's wedding. The news of her upcoming marriage had hit him harder than he expected. Claire had left him a year ago, saying he was too focused on his work and never made enough time for her. Now, as he stared at the invitation, Daniel felt a mix of sadness and bitterness. The thought of attending the wedding alone made him dread the event even more. Later that day, as Daniel walked through the bustling city streets, he noticed a woman sitting quietly on a corner. Her clothes were worn, and her hair was untidy, but she had a kind smile on her face. Despite her difficult situation, there was something dignified about her. Daniel found himself stopping and looking at her for a moment longer than usual. "Hi," Daniel said, walking up to her. "My name is Daniel." The woman looked up, a bit surprised by the friendly approach. "Hi, I'm Arlette," she replied softly, her smile warm but cautious. Daniel didn't know what had come over him, but as they talked, he found himself drawn to Arlette's quiet strength. She spoke with Arlette and intelligence, revealing that life had thrown her some tough challenges, but she hadn't lost her kindness or hope. The more Daniel listened, the more he admired her resilience. Then, in a moment of impulsive compassion mixed with a desire to show up at the wedding with someone unexpected, Daniel asked, "Arlette, would you like to come to a wedding with me? My ex-girlfriend is getting married, and I could use some company. I'll make sure you have a nice dress, a good meal, and a chance to experience something different." Arlette blinked in surprise. "You want me to be your date to a wedding?" she asked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Yes," Daniel nodded. "Why not? You deserve a day to feel special. And honestly, I could use the company." Arlette hesitated for a moment, considering the strange but intriguing offer. Finally, with a small smile, she agreed. "All right, Daniel, I'll go with you." Neither of them knew it at the time, but this decision would set off a chain of events that would change both of their lives forever. Daniel walked away from that street corner with a sense of anticipation, not knowing that Arlette would soon become far more than just a wedding date. Daniel kept his promise to Arlette and took her to one of the city's most exclusive boutiques. As they walked through the grand doors, Arlette's eyes widened at the sight of the luxurious surroundings. Rows of designer dresses, sparkling jewelry, and elegant shoes displayed like art pieces. For a moment, she felt out of place, but Daniel's reassuring smile gave her the confidence to step forward. The boutique staff at first glanced at Arlette with a mix of curiosity and indifference. Her worn clothes and tired appearance didn't fit the usual clientele. But when Daniel made it clear that he was there to help Arlette find the perfect outfit, their attitudes quickly shifted. They brought out their finest dresses, shoes, and accessories, treating Arlette with the same attention and care they would give to any wealthy customer. Arlette felt a mix of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and disbelief, as the staff worked their magic. They styled her hair, applied makeup, and helped her into a stunning dress that fit her like it was made just for her. When she finally looked at herself in the mirror, she could hardly recognize the woman staring back. She looked elegant, confident, and beautiful, but most importantly, she felt a spark of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. As they left the boutique, Arlette turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Daniel. I've never felt like this before. It's overwhelming in a good way." Daniel smiled back at her, genuinely happy to see her transformation. "You deserved it, Arlette. You're more than what life has thrown at you." Later that evening, as they sat in a quiet cafe, Daniel and Arlette began to open up to each other. Arlette shared her story, how she had once lived a normal life but fell on hard times after losing her job and facing a series of unfortunate events. She spoke about the loneliness and hardship of living on the streets, but also about the small acts of kindness from strangers that kept her going. Daniel listened intently, feeling a deep respect for the strength Arlette had shown in the face of adversity. In turn, he shared his own struggles, how the pressure to succeed in his career had led him to neglect his relationship with Claire, and how he was still grappling with the guilt and pain of their breakup. For the first time, Daniel felt like he could talk about his emotions without fear of judgment. As they talked, a genuine connection began to form between them, one built on mutual respect, empathy, and understanding. They found comfort in each other's stories, realizing that despite their different backgrounds, they had both faced their own battles and come out stronger. The day of the wedding arrived, and as Arlette stepped out in her beautiful dress, she looked like a completely different person. The transformation was not just physical. She now carried herself with a renewed sense of confidence and dignity. Daniel, seeing her, couldn't help but feel proud of her and the journey she had taken in just a few short days. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked, offering her his arm. Arlette nodded, a determined smile on her face. Yes, I am. Together, they walked out of the apartment, ready to face whatever the day might bring. Little did they know, their arrival at the wedding would soon become the talk of the event, and the bond they had formed would be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. Daniel and Arlette arrived at the grand venue, the doors opening to reveal an elegant hall filled with well-dressed guests, glittering chandeliers, and a live orchestra playing softly in the background. As they stepped inside, it felt as though time slowed down. Heads turned, conversations paused, and all eyes were suddenly on them. Arlette, with her newfound poise and stunning dress, walked confidently beside Daniel. She was no longer the woman from the street corner. She was someone who belonged, someone who commanded attention. The whisper started almost immediately, spreading like wildfire through the crowd. People exchanged glances, trying to figure out who this beautiful, mysterious woman was and why Daniel, the groom's ex, had brought her. Claire, the bride, stood at the far end of the room, greeting guests with her new husband. But when she caught sight of Daniel and Arlette, her smile faltered. For a moment, she was completely taken aback. Arlette's presence was unexpected, and the way Daniel looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, stirred something unsettling within Claire. As Daniel and Arlette made their way through the crowd, Daniel began introducing her to various guests. Each introduction was met with polite but surprised smiles. Arlette handled herself with Arlette and charm, but she could sense the curiosity and judgment behind their eyes. Still, she kept her head high, refusing to let their reactions affect her. Eventually, Claire approached them, her expression polite but strained. Daniel, it's good to see you, she said, her eyes flicking to Arlette. And you must be? This is Arlette, Daniel said, his tone warm and proud. She's my date for the evening. Claire forced a smile, but her discomfort was clear. Arlette, it's a pleasure to meet you. You look lovely. Thank you, Arlette replied, her voice calm and confident. You have a beautiful wedding. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension. Claire struggled to maintain her composure, feeling a mix of jealousy and regret as she looked at Daniel and Arlette together. She had expected Daniel to attend the wedding alone, perhaps looking sad or lost, but instead he seemed happier than she'd ever seen him, especially in the presence of this woman who appeared out of nowhere. As the evening progressed, the orchestra began playing a slow, romantic tune. Daniel turned to Arlette with a smile. May I have this dance? Arlette hesitated for a moment, but the warmth in Daniel's eyes gave her the courage to say yes. He led her to the dance floor, and as they started to move, Arlette felt herself relax. The music, the elegance of the room, and the gentle sway of the dance made everything else fade away. But not for Claire. She watched from the sidelines, her heart sinking as she observed the easy way Daniel and Arlette moved together. The jealousy she felt was sharp, but so was the regret. Watching Daniel with Arlette made Claire question her own choices, wondering if she had made a mistake by letting him go. For Daniel, however, the dance was a revelation. As he held Arlette in his arms, he realized that what had started as an impulsive decision had grown into something far more meaningful. Arlette wasn't just a beautiful companion to make his ex jealous. She was someone he genuinely cared about. The emotions that surfaced within him during that dance were new and unexpected, and for the first time since his breakup with Claire, Daniel felt a sense of peace and happiness. As the song ended, Daniel looked into Arlette's eyes and knew that the night and their journey together was far from over. What had begun as a simple act of defiance was turning into something deeper, something real. And it was only the beginning of a story neither of them had anticipated. As the evening wore on, the tension in the room became almost palpable. Claire, who had been trying to keep up appearances, found herself increasingly fixated on Daniel and Arlette. Every time she glanced in their direction, she felt a surge of emotions she had tried to bury. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She caught Daniel alone near the garden entrance, away from the bustling reception hall. Daniel, she began, her voice tight. Can we talk for a moment? Daniel, sensing the discomfort in her tone, nodded. Of course, Claire. What's on your mind? Claire hesitated, trying to find the right words. I didn't expect you to bring someone like Arlette to the wedding. I mean, it's obvious she's not from our usual circle. I'm concerned about how people might perceive this. Daniel frowned, taken aback by her words. Claire, Arlette is a wonderful person. She may not come from wealth, but that doesn't define her worth. Why does it matter what others think? Claire's mask of concern began to slip, revealing the jealousy underneath. I just don't want you to get hurt, Daniel. You've been through so much already, and I don't think she. Before Claire could finish, Arlette approached, having overheard enough of the conversation to understand its nature. She stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. "Excuse me, Claire," Arlette said softly. "I couldn't help but overhear. I know I'm not what you expected, and that's okay. But Daniel invited me here because he saw something in me that others often overlook. We've all made mistakes, and we've all needed a second chance at some point in our lives. I'm here tonight not just for Daniel, but for myself, to remind myself that I'm more than my circumstances." Claire was momentarily speechless, caught off guard by Arlette's directness and the quiet strength in her words. She had expected Arlette to shy away, to be intimidated by the surroundings and the people. But instead, Arlette stood firm, her gaze unwavering. Daniel looked at Arlette, feeling a deep surge of respect and affection. He realized that Arlette was more than just a companion for the evening. She was someone who had faced life's challenges with Arlette and resilience, someone who could stand up for herself and for others. In that moment, Daniel knew that his feelings for her had grown into something real, something far beyond the initial impulse that had brought them together. The exchange didn't go unnoticed. Guests nearby who had been watching discreetly now saw Arlette in a new light. The whispers that had once been filled with judgment turned to admiration. Arlette's poise and dignity in the face of such a confrontation left a lasting impression on everyone present. Claire, flustered and unsure of herself for the first time that night, mumbled something about needing to get back to her guests. She quickly excused herself, leaving Daniel and Arlette standing together in the quiet garden. Daniel turned to Arlette, his expression softening. "Thank you, Arlette. Didn't have to do that." Arlette smiled gently. "I know, but I wanted to. You've given me so much tonight, Daniel. The least I could do was stand by you." At that moment, Daniel knew that he no longer cared about impressing Claire or anyone else at the wedding. His focus had shifted entirely to Arlette, the woman who had not only stood by his side, but had done so with a strength and Arlette that humbled him. The evening had taken an unexpected turn, and for Daniel, it was clear that the night was no longer about the past. It was about the future, and the possibilities that lay ahead with Arlette. As the night began to wind down, Claire found Daniel alone near the edge of the dance floor, watching the remaining guests mingle. She approached him, her steps hesitant but determined. There was something in her eyes that Daniel hadn't seen before, an unusual vulnerability. "Daniel, can we talk for a moment?" Claire asked softly, her voice trembling just slightly. Daniel turned to face her, his expression unreadable but open. "Of course, Claire. What's on your mind?" Claire took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to say what she had been holding back all night. "I've been thinking. Ever since I saw you with Arlette tonight, I realized something. I made a mistake when I left you. I thought that you were too focused on your work, that you didn't have time for me, but seeing you tonight, seeing how you've changed, I regret ending things with you." Daniel was taken aback by her confession. He had never expected Claire to admit any regrets, especially not tonight. But as she spoke, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He listened intently, but something inside him had shifted. The feelings he once had for Claire, the pain of their breakup, all seemed to have dissolved into something lighter, something easier to let go of. "Claire," Daniel began gently, "I appreciate your honesty, but the truth is, I've moved on. Our relationship was important to me, but it's in the past now. What we had was real, but it's over. I found peace with that." Claire's eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. She hadn't expected Daniel to be so clear, so resolute. "I see," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry for how things ended, Daniel. I wish you all the best." Daniel nodded, offering her a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Claire. I wish you happiness too." As Claire walked away, Daniel felt a sense of liberation. He had finally closed the chapter on that part of his life, and it felt good, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He had always thought that seeing Claire again, especially at her wedding, would be painful, but instead it had brought him clarity and closure. Unbeknownst to them, Arlette had overheard their conversation. She had been passing by, heading towards the garden for a moment of quiet, when she heard Claire's confession and Daniel's response. She paused, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. She was relieved that Daniel had moved on from Claire, but a small voice in the back of her mind nagged at her. Was she just a tool for Daniel to prove a point? Was she just part of his journey to move on from his past? Arlette walked out to the garden, finding a secluded bench to sit on. She needed a moment to think, to reflect on everything that had happened that night. She knew she had grown fond of Daniel, but the doubts began to creep in. Did he truly see her for who she was, Or was she simply a symbol of his newfound freedom? As she sat there, the night air cool against her skin, Arlette realized that she had to know the answer. She couldn't let herself be a passing chapter in someone else's story. If she was going to move forward with Daniel, she needed to be sure that he saw her for the person she was, not just as a reaction to his past with Claire. The evening was drawing to a close for Arlette. The questions that lingered in her mind signaled that the night was far from over. She knew she had to talk to Daniel to find out what his true intentions were, and she'd hoped that the answers would bring her the clarity she so desperately needed. Arlette found Daniel standing alone by the garden, the cool night air offering a brief respite from the intensity of the evening. She had been wrestling with her thoughts ever since overhearing his conversation with Claire. Now, with a mix of courage and vulnerability, she approached him, knowing that this moment could define their future. "Daniel," she began softly, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "I need to ask you something." Daniel turned to face her, noticing the seriousness in her eyes. "Of course, Arlette. What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, Arlette continued, "Was I just a pawn in your plan tonight? Was this all about making Claire jealous? Because if it was, I need to know. I can't. I won't be just a tool for someone else's closure." Daniel's heart sank as he realized how his actions might have come across. He had been so caught up in the emotions of the evening that he hadn't considered how Arlette might be feeling. He stepped closer to her, his expression softening. "Arlette," he said earnestly, "I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. That was never my intention. When I first invited you, I'll admit, I was reacting to my own feelings, maybe even a bit of pride or defiance. But what I didn't expect was how much I'd come to admire and care for you." Arlette looked up at him, searching his eyes for any sign of insincerity. "So this isn't just about proving something to Claire?" Daniel shook his head, his voice filled with conviction. "No, it's not. Claire is my past, and I've made peace with that tonight. But you, Arlette, you've shown me something I didn't know I was missing. Your strength, your kindness, the way you've handled everything tonight. It's made me see things differently. I'm not thinking about Claire anymore. I'm thinking about you and how much I want to know you better beyond tonight." Arlette felt a wave of relief and emotion wash over her. Daniel's words touched her deeply, and she could sense the sincerity in his voice. For the first time that evening, she allowed herself to believe that this could be real, that she could be more than just a momentary distraction for him. "Thank you for being honest with me," Arlette replied, her voice softening. "I firmly care about you too, Daniel, but I needed to know that this wasn't just a one-time thing." Daniel reached out and gently took her hand. "It's not, Arlette. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to spend more time with you. I want to see where this can go." The bond between them deepened in that moment, as they both realized that what they had was more than just a reaction to the past. It was the beginning of something new and meaningful. Looking back at the wedding reception, where guests continued to chatter and dance, Daniel felt the sudden urge to leave the superficiality behind. He looked at Arlette and saw that she was thinking the same thing. "Why don't we get out of here?" Daniel suggested with a smile. "Let's spend the rest of the evening somewhere else, just the two of us." Arlette smiled back, feeling a warmth in her heart that she hadn't felt in a long time. "I'd like that," she replied. Together, they quietly slipped away from the wedding, choosing to leave the judgmental eyes and whispered gossip behind. They stepped into the night, ready to explore whatever the future might hold, together, on their own terms. As Daniel and Arlette walked away from the wedding, the noise and chatter of the event slowly faded into the background, replaced by the quiet, intimate conversation between them. The night air was cool, and the stars above seemed to shine just a little brighter as they strolled together hand in hand. For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt a sense of peace and optimism about the future. He turned to Arlette, his eyes reflecting a new resolve. "Arlette, I don't just want tonight to be a one-time thing. I want to help you, support you, and see where this goes. You have so much potential, and I want to be there for you as you pursue your dreams." Arlette looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and excitement. "Thank you, Daniel. You don't know what this means to me. For the first time in years, I feel like I have a chance. A real chance to turn my life around. And to do it with someone who believes in me. That's more than I ever hoped for." As they continued to walk, they began to talk about Arlette's aspirations, dreams that had been buried under the weight of her struggles. Daniel listened intently, offering encouragement and ideas on how they could work together to make those dreams a reality. Arlette felt empowered, her confidence growing with each step they took. Back at the wedding, Claire watched them from a distance, the sight of Daniel and Arlette disappearing into the night filling her with a profound sense of loss. She had thought she would always have the upper hand, that Daniel's feelings for her would never fully fade. But seeing him now, truly happy with someone else, she realized how wrong she had been. Claire felt a pang of regret, understanding that she had let go of something genuine and meaningful, a love she had taken for granted. As Daniel and Arlette reached the end of the path leading away from the wedding venue, they paused for a moment, looking out at the city lights in the distance. There was a sense of finality in the air, not of an ending, but of a new beginning. "This feels like the start of something good," Arlette said softly, squeezing Daniel's hand. "It does," Daniel agreed, smiling at her. "And I can't wait to see where it takes us." The story ends with Daniel and Arlette walking together into the night, ready to face whatever challenges and opportunities the future might bring. Their past no longer defined them. Instead, they are united by the shared hope and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The journey ahead is filled with love, growth, and endless possibilities, and they are both eager to embrace it together. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue bringing you stories filled with emotion, suspense, and unexpected twists. Thank you for being part of our community.